Hello and welcome. What is intentional selling? That's the question we're going to be exploring today with my guest and colleague, Tanja Parsley. Welcome to Conversations with Experts. I'm Denise Wakeman, your guide to better visibility on the web, and I am honored today to bring my colleague and my client, Tanja Parsley, who is the president of Partners in Performance, a Toronto-based company. Today we're going to be talking about how to sell with intention and what that means and what are some of the behaviors associated with intentional selling. This is a big issue because most of us, all of us, if we're in business, we need to make sales and we need to sell. We're selling all the time. Tanja is an expert in that field, so let me give you a little bit of background about Tanja and then we're going to dive in. And I'm going to read it so that I don't get anything messed up. So, Tanja Parsley is the president and founder of Partners in Performance, a group of business performance experts who specialize in helping their clients create more sales and shorter sales cycles. With her background in sales and business management, Tanja is recognized for her nuts and bolts approach, strategic thinking, and passion for creating relevant and results-focused learning solutions. That's a mouthful. Tanja, welcome to Conversation and Experts. I'm really excited that you're here with me today.
And I'm excited to be here.
Good, good. And I just want to let our audience know that we have a little bit of a delay in the between the audio and the video. We're working on trying to get that cleaned up beforehand, but you know, that's just something we have to deal with today. So if we talk over each other a little bit, you know, I apologize, but we'll do the best we can to make it a nice, smooth conversation. So today we're talking about sales and selling. And Tanja, you are, you know, been doing this for a long time. How'd you get involved in sales and sales training?
Well, my second career was one where I was selling for a small boutique change management company. This went back about 20 years, and I was selling a high-ticket item to multiple stakeholders, and it was intangible. There was no product. It was a contract, and the key here is that I was on 100% commission, and you learn pretty quickly what it takes to create results when you're on 100% commission. So what I realized is that after a number of months, and years I was working with this company, that's the thing that I really had good expertise in. I wanted to create a business and share what I learned with other people. And so it was just from being in the trenches myself, and of course, all of us were in business. Once I started my business, again, no paycheck. I'm relying on my own source of income. So since that time, I mean, it's just about whatever I source. So constantly continuing to learn.
Ain't that the truth? You know, as entrepreneurs, we always have to be selling our services or our products, and there are plenty of businesses out there who are people who work in businesses that are 100% commission. So why don't we start with what is intentional selling and how is that different from what we think of as selling?
Well, intentional selling is the name of the sales training program that I developed, and it's a 6-step sales pro skills training. But the reason that I call it intentional selling is because I weave this whole notion of intention through all of my sales coaching and sales training, and I believe that intention is a real differentiator in the work that I do. And so I could take a moment and just set up, you know, a context here or give you a model that I think would be useful that would help to explain that. Yeah. And, you know, if you think about a circle, let's make a circle here, and there's 3 parts, like a pie. We're going to have 3 pieces of pie. And this is a performance model that I use, and I think it's a really useful way to think about sales performance. So there's three key areas. The first part of the pie is that there really needs to be clear focus. So this has to do with knowing what it is that you want to create in your business, your sales and marketing. You know, what's the vision? What are the goals? What are the priorities? What do you want? And a lot of times people they know what they don't want, or they have maybe just a kind of a fuzzy sense of what they want, but it's not clear. There isn't that focus. So without focus, I think we can run into problems. And so focus is key. Then moving on to the mean side, that's the second piece of the pie. So first one is focus, knowing what you want means. How are you going to create that? And that has to do with your sales skills, your systems, your CRM, anything to do with how, your strategy, your tactics. And that's what most people focus on, is they focus on what they want and how they're going to get it. But there's this third piece that's called intention, which I think is critical, and that has to do with the mindset and our assumptions and our beliefs. It has to do with our determination to create the results that we want. And I think this is often a piece that's missing. It's like a three-legged stool. They all knit together. So intention is something that I believe in all the time. I'm constantly listening to what are people's levels of intention in any given situation. And there's
So what does intention mean then? How do you define intention?
Intention has to do determination, the resolve. It's really the commitment to create results. And there are levels of anywhere, like on a scale of 1 to 10, you can think in terms of 10, obviously, is where there's full-on commitment. And it's useful to know how determined you are and what's in the way of you creating the results that you want. Our assumption is part of that. So I'll give you a quick example here. I think of one of the people that I coached one time was a salesperson for a book, like selling textbooks and educational resources to universities. And so this person was about 25, calling on professors. Hadn't been that long since he had left university himself, and so was feeling a little nervous about calling on professors. But he thought of himself as being just a schmo with a book. And so that didn't work, because of course the behavior impact would be that he would knock on the professor's door very tentatively and say, "Excuse me, have you got a minute?" Be kind of apologetic. And so what he learned is that he was, even though the professor was very knowledgeable in his area of academia, this guy knew what he knew about resources, and he could help the professor. So his assumption then became, I'm a problem solver, and so then he would knock on that door and be more confident. So that's a small. We are driven. Everything that we do and say is driven by our assumptions and beliefs, and so it's a really intervene if you want to.
Just lost the end of that. You cut out, and I didn't hear that last sentence that you said. Do you mind repeating that?
The last sentence was that the area, like our mindset, there's a lot there that we can, if that's a useful place to intervene when we want to accelerate, get more results, and do it faster. This is a very powerful place to check in. So of course, there's also yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, that's the intention. That answers why I do is on the mean side. I talked about focus, means, and intention, and that I weave intention all the way throughout. But your intention will wane if you don't have good skills. Like, you might have really great intent. You really want to improve, accelerate your results. But if you don't have good sales process skills, for example, then after a while your intention will wane. So selling workshop that I do is a 6-step sales process skills training, which really defines an intentional methodology in terms of how we approach our customer interactions, whether they're face-to-face or ear-to-ear or email interactions or voice interactions. There's a methodology, there's a discipline in terms of how we structure those meetings.
You talk about, or before I ask this question, I just want to mention that on this event page, there's an image that I posted that shows the 10 steps of intention, so people can take a look at that if they want some more clarity about that. But you know, you talk about mindset, and is that that's probably, it sounds like that's where you really have to lay the foundation for people. So is that what you refer to as sales behavior? Is that where mindset comes in?
Well, mindset and intention does impact our behavior, but so there's an impact. But sales behavior is, you know, what are you saying and doing? How are you opening up your sales meeting? What are you doing to prepare for your sales meeting? When you're sitting in front of somebody, what are you saying and doing? All the way throughout, and then what are you saying and doing in the follow-up? Specifically, talking about, you know, the words, your call to action, your follow-up, how you open up the meeting, the questions that you ask. So again, paying a lot of attention to the questioning behavior. What are the quality of the questions? So behavior is impacted by our intention, but it's a skill. I mean, this is a learning really strong selling skills and habits. Well, it's as simple as that. You can do it when you're shown how. Yeah.
You talk about 3 mistakes that smart people make when it comes to selling. So why don't you share with us those mistakes and, you know, how we can get around them? Because I'm probably guilty of all of them. So why don't you share that with us?
Okay. Well, again, I think I've touched a little bit on the first one. The first one is that salespeople often do not have a defined approach to their sales meetings, so they don't have the structure. You know, it's interesting because, you know, consultants will have a really well-defined methodology for their consulting processes. You know, people, whatever your business is, there's often really strong standards and operational methodologies. But when it comes to selling, there is oftentimes I see that it's ad hoc, and yet, you know, selling is it's the lifeblood of our organization, of our business. You know, we don't get to do our consulting, we don't get to run our business if we don't know how to sell. And so the same discipline, that same methodology, that's repeatable, and it is important to really to develop that capability as well. It's just as important. So that's one.
Okay.
So the second one is that people do not ask enough questions. Yeah, that's a big one. That's a huge one. And then the third one is that there is not a concrete call to action. It's really quite astonishing how loose people leave the end of a sales meeting. Well, I guess the best example, I mean, I learned this myself the hard way, and still make the mistake. I'll admit it from time to time. I think, you know, I teach this stuff, I should know, but I remember, you know, in my early selling days, one time, I'm talking about the call to action, so that you understand exactly what I mean by a concrete call to action. I had a meeting, and the client asked me to put a proposal together. So I said, sure, I'll put a proposal together. So I did, and then when I tried to call her back, set up the meeting to review it, of course, I didn't hear from her, and then it just never materialized. So what I really emphasize now is the importance of making sure that when you are in a meeting, that the call to action is for the client. Yes, you're doing something. It might be, you know, sending material. It might be doing a proposal. But what are you asking the client to do? They need to have skin in the game. I call it skin in the game, to demonstrate their commitment. So in this example, what I should have asked is, when are you available on Monday at 2 o'clock, so that it's timed. So I'm not leaving any sales meeting or any phone call or any email. At the bottom of every email, I always have a concrete call to action that moves the action forward. because what ends up happening if we don't do that is then there's interest, but then the client might go on holidays, you're playing email tag, you lose momentum, and then the next thing you know, the opportunities just disappeared into the ether. And so it's always about having a next step that's nailed down. I call it land the plane every time from one thing to the next.
Well, I like that, land the plane, and I think that in all aspects of what we're doing, whether it's online selling or, as you say, ear-to-ear or face-to-face, we always have to have a call to action because otherwise nothing happens, right? So I like the idea that you said, it's got to be really specific, like timed. Like, are you available at 2 p.m. on Monday? I mean, that's so specific rather than let me know when you're available, because that's vague, right?
Yeah. It's true for email, too. So that, when I coach people around writing emails, it's the same thing. You want to make sure, here are two times when I'm available. Please confirm which works or suggest your option, period, is my standard. And you want to do it at the top of the email, and you want to repeat it again, because a lot of you do it at the top in an email simply because people need to know that that's what's getting asked. You have to get up because the way, just that people are overwhelmed with email. So it applies to email as well as meetings. Always moving the action forward.
Okay, always moving the action forward. I like that. Always moving it forward, because otherwise we waste a lot of time, and none of us have time to waste. It's like, well, what about this? Well, what about that? And I've certainly played that game way too many times. So I really appreciate that reminder to be very specific about what we're looking for, because this is how we close those sales, whatever it whatever that may be. Now you mentioned the levels of intention, and they go from 1 to 10. Can you talk a little bit more specifically about some of the levels? What does level 1 mean? What does that look like? What does level 10 look like? Just take us through them maybe quickly. I mean, again, this is there's an image posted, but I'd just like to get a little bit more clarity about what these different levels are.
Well, and there's no judgment like 1 is bad and 10 is good. The usefulness of the model is to be aware where we are at. Where am I at? Where are my clients? It's also something I use to get a sense of where my clients might be at. But so 1 is obviously, on a scale of 1 to 10, is a low level, and there'd be no intent. And sometimes that's what you want. You want to be able to say no to certain things so that you could top 10 as opposed to the top 500. So 1 is low, is no intent. 2 is getting up there. 2 or 3 is where there is maybe a lot of wishing and hoping and talking about it, but there's still no action. So when there's no action, I use the analogy, I wish I'd win the $1 million lottery, but I don't buy a ticket. So there's no chance that that's going to happen. So when we get a little higher to 4, then at least we're trying. We say, I'm going to give that a try. The problem with try is we give ourselves permission. It's a bit of an experiment, so we give ourselves permission that if it doesn't work, it's okay. As we get up higher to want levels of intention, usually people are pretty good when they have a want level, but it's often associated with what I call the but. I really want that, but. And it's often what I call a bit of a victim story, where we're putting the blame on somebody else, that the marketing will have to get their act together, or whatever it is. It's not me. I'm not in 100% control. So commitment is full-on commitment, where we do whatever it takes. We have clarity about what it is we want. We go under, we go around, we go through. We'll hit barriers, but commitment's the fuel that really helps us get through those obstacles. It's a good tip for marriage, too, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I wish I had a good marriage. Well, or I'm committed to a great marriage, right?
Exactly.
Well, and with our clients, and in a way, I mean, that is a relationship, right? And or even our prospects, we we get to know them on some level. We either don't know them at all, and then we meet them, and then we have to work our way up to that total commitment to deliver whatever it is that we have agreed to deliver and what they've agreed to purchase. So that, I mean, to me, that's like 10 is, you got the sale and now you're like married.
And you'll deliver the value, and you're determined and committed to that client focus, right? Yeah,
Right.
true.
So, what would you say is the most persuasive selling skill?
Well, persuasion is something that is something very near and dear to my heart. I think I'm fascinated. I do a lot of reading around all the different aspects of persuasion. And of course, that's what we're doing when we sell. But if I were to answer that question, I think the number one, the most persuasive selling skill that is often overlooked is questions persuade more than any other selling behavior. And so selling is not telling, and we just get it's very powerful. I'm talking about high quality questions. The quality of the question determines the quality of the answer. So, having strategic questions and what I call high gain questions, a very, very powerful way to persuade. And the reason for that, a couple of reasons, that that's the only that we can be relevant and make the appropriate connections with our clients. Once we are ready to talk about some of our ideas or solutions, then we can only do it when we've asked the questions and we can connect the dots with the answers that we've heard. So that's one reason for sure, is then add value and only be relevant if we ask good questions first. And the other thing too is it's their ideas. You're pulling things out from your client that, of course, they're going to own these ideas because they're there. So questions. It's interesting. There's some research that I often quote, and it comes from Huthwaite research. The authors of Spin Selling. Some of you may have heard of Spin Selling. They've been around for a long time. And what they did, the Huthwaite organization, they looked at 35,000 sales transactions in the field, and they looked at the selling behaviors, and what they found, the most successful salespeople did three things differently. And one of them was that they asked a lot more questions. The second one was that they waited and let the client do a lot more of the talking. And then the third, I think, is key, is that they waited much longer to jump in with their solutions before. So they resisted the temptation. Oftentimes we hear something and we're just chomping at the bit to get in there and oh, I've got the answer for that. So the notion here is hold off and wait, ask another question, and don't take the bait. And that's a really very persuasive approach. It works.
It's very much like a coaching approach, isn't it? Asking the questions and finding out, where the client wants to go, or the prospect, when you're in a sales situation. And, I agree that it's like we seem to be natural problem solvers. We want to jump in and say, oh, well, we can do this, we can do that. And that's not necessarily what the prospect or client wants to hear, right? They want to tell their story.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I like that you make the link to the coaching approach. Whether it's a coaching approach or a consulting approach, the traditional selling where you're going in there and it's adversarial, obviously those days are long gone. Although there are still people who are out there doing it. It's sometimes called consultative selling or needs-based selling. As far as I'm concerned, coaching, consulting, and selling are all the same thing. I hardly differentiate. Of course, there are distinctions that we do make, but it's very much a coaching approach or a consulting approach right from the get-go.
Do you have any?
Yeah, so it's not like.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead and finish.
Sorry, you go.
Okay.
You go.
Yes, this is where the delay comes in. Do you have any suggested styles of questions that seem to get, help go deeper, get better answers? Like, are there certain types of questions that we can add to our little selling question arsenal or toolbox?
Well, there are a couple of things on that. So first of all, I think that it's important to ask a broader spectrum of questions. I think oftentimes people ask a very narrow range, so you want to be more strategic with your questions. So instead of thinking, well, I have 1,000 questions, it's useful to organize your questions in buckets. So you might have, I have one model. I have a couple of different models, but one model is a 6P model. And so some of the questions are around questions that might be to do with partnering. Some of the questions might be questions around product, might be around positioning, around prospects. What are your, so for example, a prospect question might be, who are your typical clients? Tell me what your clients, what are some of the challenges that your clients are facing? So that's an example of a prospect question. So rather than having 1,000 questions, it's useful to organize your questions strategically. And in the context of that structure or that 6P model or whatever strategic model you might use, one of the things that I think is really important is to ask a more opinion-finding question. So you're finding out, so what's your perspective on that? What's your reaction to that? Or what's driving you to move into that market at this point? So it's not just asking questions about their business that they already know the answers to, and you're not really adding value with, one that benefits when you're selling. But when you ask those types of questions that are thought-provoking, then even the questioning process is one where the client benefits because you're making them think, and that is helpful for them, and you're getting really rich information at the same time.
Okay, yeah, I like that opinion-based questions. That I think takes it to another level, and I think that seems to be where the whole intention piece can really make a difference too, because that, from how I understand it, by going to that deeper level, you can then find out not only what their intentions are for wanting to work with you or your products or services, but also how you can be more intentional about what you offer.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I was right about that. Good.
You are, yeah.
Okay. So what is it? How do people get started learning intentional selling skills? What is there a book, or is this something that needs to be trained? I know you do training in the Toronto area. Well, actually, all over Canada. Maybe you train in the U.S. too. I don't know. But where does one start if they want to move into intentional selling versus the traditional way?
Well, in terms of the work that I do is often tailored for companies, and so I've actually done this work all over the world. I mean, I did a lot of work with BlackBerry, and it's not just in Canada and the U.S. But for my followers who are solopreneurs or smaller business owners, then my blog has got a lot of really rich information about all process, and some of the real scripts and templates and the detail specifics around the behaviors, around how to prepare for meetings, how to open meetings, questioning skills, closing, how to close, how to structure your call to action. All those things are written up in various blog posts that I've been writing for the last couple of years, and also I am in the midst right now of working on a video training program that I'll be launching in the
Excellent. Excellent.
partners that
Okay, just lost that last
a big company that will bring me in. I
Unfortunately.
certainly do phone coaching as well. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, lots of
Okay, well,
that.
what's the best place? We're basically at the bottom of the hour, so, and this is
Lots
typically we
of
do about
that.
30 minutes. Where can people get a hold of you?
Partnersinperformance.ca, TP at partnersinperformance.ca
Okay.
is my email, and that would probably be the best way. And yeah, that's.
Okay, and also I know
Or
that
you can, yeah.
I know you have an assessment that people can take, a free assessment when they sign up for your newsletter, and your newsletter also has a lot of great sales tips in it too. So, and I'll put these links in the event page because you've been breaking up a little bit, and I don't think we caught your site there. But if you go to partnersinperformance.ca/newsletter, you can get access to a free sales assessment that Tanja provides, and that way you can see how your sales skills stack up and see where maybe you might need a little more input, or maybe you're doing great, or maybe you need a sales training. But in any case, definitely go check out Tanja's site at partnersinperformance.ca. Sign up for the newsletter, get the sales assessment, and you can start really taking in some of this information about being more intentional about your selling. And we're all in business. My audience, I know that you're in business. You're either a solopreneur or you have a small business and have other people selling for you, whether you're writing emails that are sales directed, or you do your calling, or whatever it is you do. We all need help. I know I do. I'll raise my hand there. But definitely take a look at what Tanja's doing on her blog and get in touch with her if you need some sales coaching. Tanja, thank you for being my guest today on Conversations with Experts. I really appreciate your perspective on selling, and that it seems like it's a much more natural and friendly approach to the whole selling process. It doesn't feel like selling per se.
Thank you, Denise. Pleasure.
Okay. And
thanks for having me on your Google Hangout.
You're most welcome. You're most welcome. And so this is Conversations with Experts. It's an occasional series of Hangouts with experts in various areas of doing business, whether it's on or off the web. If you will subscribe to my blog, or just watch my blog, or follow me on Facebook or Google Plus or Twitter, I announce these occasional Conversations with Experts. I also do a twice monthly show called Adventures in Visibility, and you can get information about that at adventuresinvisibility.com. Till next time, have an adventurous day, and good selling to you.